I got a murder hat trick, yes! I never would have thought I would be cheering for someone's death, so thank you, Josh, for making me sound totally deranged when I'm talking about the show out in public. I will admit, it is ridiculously disappointing to look back and see how many points I could have had I actually gone with what I had originally wanted to in the first 3 episodes instead of talking myself out of it. I know at this point there is no way I could possibly still be in the running for the grand prize of awesomeness, but that's okay! I'm still sleuthing my little heart out to the end. And speaking of the end...
It's the final countdown! The final countdown!
Barbara is our confirmed killer! Last episode, we knew it either had to be Lindsay or Barbara, and Lindsay's sort of all kinds of dead right now. She did look a little confused when she hit the tripwire that released the puma, but hey, you never know who's watching, you gotta put on a show. She seems to have also discovered that Ryan is no longer in his hole. The puma is out and about and going after everybody. Miles leaves a trail of clothes behind him while running away, but he manages to escape behind a fence, all while being confused about the presence of the puma because it doesn't make sense geographically. Barbara is able to ward off attack using her patented distress signal on the cat synth, and Ryan gets pinned down by it for a brief period of time before, well, you know.
It's a little too fast. Okay, oh my god, please! Ah!
This week is special because in choosing the next death, we are ultimately also choosing the survivor. Because we know Barbara has to be the killer, we're deciding between the fates of Ryan and Miles. Before episode 5 aired, Josh gave us a huge hint. He told us that 2 of the remaining 3 instruments of death had already been revealed, meaning that one of them was missing. At the time, it was not hugely helpful. But now that we've gone through 2 of those episodes and there's only 1 left, this becomes a massive hint. Why? Because knowing that 2 of the 3 had previously been revealed, and that no new weapons showed up in episodes 6 or 7, and that the weapons used in 6 and 7 had been previously revealed in some way, shape, or form, we know that the final weapon that is used in this last episode has to be something that we have not seen or heard of in any capacity. No reveal whatsoever. So that narrows down the list of weapons that we have available to us incredibly. That means our list of possible weapons for this final episode are a literal red herring, the bathroom scale, lava, Joe the cat, the king's crown, the crescent rose scythe, the power of math, the treadmill, and slow motion explosions. That's all we've got left. We can relatively easily infer that some of these weapons that were put on the list were there as red herrings for either other weapons that were being used or other people who were killed earlier in the series, and because of that we can remove them from the list. You can also probably make an argument for lava being revealed earlier because of Lindsay's comment in episode 2 about the floor being lava, or removing the power of math because it is pretty directly tied to Gus in other Rooster Teeth stuff. They're not the most solid arguments, but all things considered at this point, I don't actually think they're going to be used, and I think that the connections they could have to who is left are non-existent, so kicking those out too. The literal red herring has been killing me all season. That could be used with any person at any time. Honestly, I think it ended up on the list because they were probably sitting in a meeting and went, okay, we planned all the other deaths. What are some red herrings that we can put on here to throw people off? And someone chuckled and went, we should put a literal red herring on the list. And everyone laughed, and then they wrote it down. But in the absence of being able to confirm that that's how that meeting went, I have to at least consider it. Miles was very obviously a red herring for us from the very beginning. He was designed to look like the murderer for most of the series. It would be more irony than pun if he were to die by literal red herring as the final death, but I could see an argument being made for it. That all said, Ryan could also very easily be argued for a literal red herring death, because he has spent a few episodes wondering if he might be the murderer, and the actual killer has been running around in his GTA 5 outfit. Looking at our remaining weapons, we have the treadmill, which doesn't sound very funny or punny or relevant, and you're kind of tempted to throw it out. Until you kind of look at Miles as less of a name and more of a unit of distance that treadmills tend to measure. And I don't know if you've ever fallen on an active treadmill, but those things can do some serious damage to you. Not that I know or anything. It happened to a friend of mine. You don't know him. Don't worry about it. Shush. Let's take Miles' name one step further. We still have the Crescent Rose Scythe on the table as a possible weapon. Crescents make me think of dinner rolls and moons. And you know what else means moon? Luna. Our dear Mad King Ryan would likely love to have his crown, but what if it met his head somewhat forcefully? After all, a relatively common term for getting whacked in the head is crowned. So at this moment, we have 5 pretty reasonable options for who dies. So how do we whittle it down? Logically, there are a series of clues that would point us in the right directions. Honestly, I have watched the series from start to finish enough times that I can't keep track of it on my fingers anymore, and I have relatively solid arguments for both Ryan and Miles being the survivor, and then by default making the other one the final death. So I'm gonna have to work through this a different way. If Ryan or Miles had been implicated as the murderer until the very end, I would see the literal red herring as a really solid option. In the absence of that, and the fact that everyone else's death has been directly related to them and not our outside view of them, I don't think there's a lot of ground for that one to stand on, so I'm throwing both the red herring options out. As much as I love the Luna Crescent Rose connection, I'm going to have to throw it out for 2 reasons. The first is that I think it goes beyond what they can reasonably expect someone who's unfamiliar with RT content to be able to figure out on their own. There is Ruby shit popping up everywhere through the series, but would someone who's unfamiliar with Rooster Teeth know that there is Ruby shit popping up everywhere? I know I'm seeing it, but I know that I'm looking for it. I'm recognizing lyrics because I'm familiar with the show. I don't know if that's something that, I mean, how do you Google appearances? So I think that's kind of an issue. The second reason is kind of cheating. It's kind of cheating. And it definitely goes beyond the confines of the show, but you know what? This is clutch time. I'm going to use whatever I can at this point. So the second thing I'm cutting it for is because at RTX this summer, when we got to see all of the girls dress as their characters, Lindsay did not have her scythe, and the reason she didn't have it is because it was too difficult to make accurately. And I know they could probably do it in the show with some editing magic, but that seems really intensive. And so I'm saying it's not really a possibility because I know they don't have a scythe. I don't care. I'm totally going with it. I just need some reason to start whittling stuff down. So I'm using that bit of knowledge. So thank you, RTX. So now we're down to Ryan in the crown and Miles in the treadmill. I am going to go with Miles in the treadmill, and here's my reasoning for that. Ryan getting crowned to death seems way too personally gruesome for this show. Yes, Gavin was disemboweled by mousetraps and Lindsay's limbs were all severed off by a puma and her head was thrown around everywhere. And those, I'm not saying those are pretty, but those were all other things at play. For someone to get crowned to death, Barbara's going to have to actually, like, physically shove the spiky end of a crown into his skull, and that seems way too intimate, and I think that kind of crosses a weird line. So, I don't think it's a line that they would cross. So, I'm thinking that's probably not so good for it, too. Barbara's murder photo from episode 1 had the bumped off pun underlined. Again, falling off of a moving treadmill can do some serious damage, especially if it's been engineered for murder. Bumping someone off of it would be a pretty effective way of facilitating that. And finally, honestly, I'm already out, and I just really want to believe that I pegged the hardest part at the very beginning. I want Ryan to be the survivor, so Miles has to be the one that dies. Although, if Ryan lives, he's probably going to be blamed for all the bodies, and that's not going to end well for him anyways. And that, my friends, is the end. The final episode goes up soon, followed by an explanation of everything that we missed from Grandmaster Josh shortly after. I think we've all learned a couple valuable things over these last 2 months. Number 1, don't piss off Josh, because he will engineer a terrible death for you and confuse everyone as to how it happened. And I'm a terrible detective! Lesson learned. Peace out, guys, and thanks for watching. And the fact that everyone else's death has been directly related to them and not our outside. Okay. Our new list is a literal. This means our list of possible weapons for this episode are a literal. Our new list is a literal. I can't say literal! Fucking A. Okay.